Okay, so today we're going to use this time to introduce some basic information, some basic knowledge about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and basically we're going to use this a few hours to build a website. We're going to call it Open Publication System so that it is a very simple website so that everyone can publish article on our website. So the knowledge that is required includes HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and some database information. HTML and CSS are relatively easy. JavaScript is the major chunk of knowledge that you're going to learn in this few hours course. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do in this lecture is we're going to create a repository for the project. So this lecture will be given in a way that I'm going to develop this project. I'm going to think aloud and to see how I typically define this type of website. Okay, let's go to GitHub and let's create a website. Let's create a repository. Let's click on a new repository. So remember I said before, you should never write any code without creating any without working in any version control system. So here, the first thing we need to do is to create a repository. Since we call it Open Publication System, let's name it as OPS. Okay, let's keep it private for now. Let's add README, add a git ignore, then find the git ignore template. Let's say JavaScript. I don't know if there's a JavaScript. Web. Node.js. Okay, let's just use Node.js one. We'll talk about Node.js later. Okay, choose a license. We're going to make it public, so let's use MIT license. Create repository. Okay, so I have a repository ready. And in this tutorial, I'm going to use this environment that is called Windows Subsystem for Linux. We're going to use this environment to develop our website. Okay, so this is a fresh install of a Windows Subsystem for Linux. This is a Ubuntu 2004 fresh install, so I don't have anything that I added to this environment. So basically, if you recreate my tutorial, you should be able to follow all the commands that I have been typing in. So I will not, for anything I'm going to install, I will not hide from you. I will just directly record it in the video, okay? So since we have a repository, let's clone this repository. My personal style is to always use this type of a structure. Let's create this directory. Let's call it dev. Sorry. In my home folder, let's create a dev source github.com as Yifan. Okay, then the cd. Let's go into this dev source github.com as Yifan. Then let's do git clone. I can do a git clone. Let's use HTTPS. Okay. Typically, I would prefer to use SSH, but using SSH, I need to configure my Windows subsystem for Linux. So let's use HTTPS. As Yifan, then we need password. I need to find my password for GitHub. Copy password, paste it here. Okay, so I can clone it. So we have OBS. Let's get into OBS. One thing that is really convenient in Windows is that you have this Linux environment, and you can still use VS Code to develop your source code. So I can simply type code dot. So if you run this for the first time, I have to say this is not the first time I run code dot because I just want to test it if it works or not. So I basically run the code dot before I started recording this video. It will Windows Subsystem for Linux will automatically install this code server for you. Okay, but it's straightforward. So this is our VS Code. We're going to develop in this environment. Some update. Okay, so let's create a folder first. Let's name this folder as client. So these are going to be our client or front end code, uh, front end project. We're going to include HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript code here. So this is client. Then the first thing in this video I'm going to show you is how to use HTML to create a very simple login page. Okay, let's create a new file. Login.html. So we're writing HTML right now. What is HTML? Let me zoom in a little bit. So what is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So it is a language by itself, but it's not considered as a program language. So if you're writing your CV and you write your skills section, then you say, okay, program language, I have HTML. Don't write in that way. HTML is not considered as a program language. It's a markup language, and it's really simple. It's generally considered as something that is required for a computer science student. So I would say if you write your resume, do not put HTML as one program language. Do not put CSS unless your CSS skill is very strong, is your main skill. Do not put CSS as your skill. JavaScript, TypeScript, and they are good program languages. Okay. So it's a markup language. It's a domain-specific language that basically shows, say, what information that it needs to show in a browser. So how to start it? The first line of HTML is always a doc type. So it tells you what type of page it is. In early version, before HTML5, this doc string can be very long. But after HTML5, everyone simply use doc type HTML. It's much simpler than the browser knows, okay, you are writing in HTML5 standard, and it will start to support many features. So it's simple, you need to declare the doc type is HTML, not something else. Then HTML always organized in a way of tags. So this is not a tag. This is just a doc tag type declaration, but a tag is in this way. So the root tag is always HTML. Okay, so this tag is the start tag, and this is the closing. Say, okay, at this point we're closing this tag. HTML page should always have this root tag as HTML, and also you can have in HTML you need to have two most important tags. One is called header. One is called head, not header. The other one is body. Okay, you have a head, you have a body. The head is basically used to declare basic information, some metadata about this page. The body is used to show the content of this page. So before we write anything, let's talk about how to show this how to show this web page in a browser. What we can do here is say, let's come here. We can use Python to serve as a temporary static server. So let's use client, then this Python 3 -m, which means we're executing this module. Simple, I think it's HTTP simple server. I don't really remember that. Every time I have to check it. Python 3 HTTP server. HTTP server. Nice. Okay, so it will ask me to allow access. I would allow it the access for Python. So I'm starting Python -m HTTP server. Then I can start this server on this particular port. So how would you access it? Because I'm accessing locally, it actually already show you this. You can copy this page, copy this link, then paste it in your browser. let me try something else. Okay, localhost works. So since we have a login.html, so right now here we're accessing this localhost 8000, this port. So this is a website, right? And this page is actually provided by Python. For most of web servers, by default, if you are not specifying the page name, you're just directly using this this address. It will first try to look at something called index.html. If you have an index.html, let's create this HTML really quick. Add and also body. Okay, so we created this index.html. If we have this index.html, it will show that page. If we do not have that index.html, it will show the file structure. So it's a good habit to always include index.html in a folder that is exposed to the network, because you don't want anyone to know something hidden in your folder structure, in your file structure. It may provide some extra information for hackers to hack your system. So always provide an index.html file, even if you do not want to use it. Okay, that's I'm using Control R to refresh it. You can see, okay, I'm having an empty page. We probably will work on index.html later, because we don't want to just directly let people to see, okay, the blank page when they log into our system. So let's start work on login HTML. Okay, so head. The one important thing that we're going to have in the head is something called title. So HTML is more about a large number of different type of tags. You need to remember what those tags are for. So we have this type of title, we have meta, we have some tags to declare encoding. But let's make it simple. We use this title, and we're going to show, okay, this is OPS system, open publication system. Then this is login page. Okay, this is login page. We save this file. Then let's come to the browser. Let's refresh it. Sorry, I have to go to in this login.html. So you see, the only thing that is changed is this title here. It now says ops-login as what we declared. So this is something that is a tag just to tell the browser what to show in as the title of this tag. So right now in the body, let's try to start to create some content. There are some very important tags that we're going to use. So for example, let's start with some common tags. So if we want to have a title, let's say this is the OPS system. This is OPS. Okay, make it simple. So H1 stands for header 1. It's a title level 1, and we can refresh it. You can see, okay, it shows as a title. Okay, H1. This is OPS. Then, of course, we have different level of titles. We have at H2, H3. You can see how different they are, and there actually I think there are 7 level of titles. Although I've never used anything that is below H4. So you can see it's getting smaller and smaller until it's a similar size of probably just a regular text. So sometimes you want to write a regular text. If you want to write regular text, you can simply directly write text here. You don't have to include in a tag. But I think this is a generally a bad idea, because later on you cannot control the style of this particular text. But let's do an experiment. This is OPS login page. Okay, and let's refresh. You can see, okay, this is the pure text. You can see this is pretty much the same as H4. So you can directly put text here, but if you want to say, you want to write a long page, let's say Wikipedia HTML, you want to put a lot of information, let's copy, paste this information, lots of text. Now we paste this text here. Then let's refresh this page. You can see, okay, it's automatically structured in this way. Then, yeah, it tries to consider this image and input as text. But sometimes we want to have more control on this. We want to include this paragraph into a tag. So a tag for paragraph is simply called -p. Sorry, it's simply called P. It stands for paragraph. We can now move this region in a P paragraph. Other tags such as P. Okay, this is a big problem. We need to remove this. Just let's temporarily remove this that P tag because it considered as a tag rather than part of the text here. Okay, let's refresh it. So you see, okay, the format slightly changes. Okay, so this is a paragraph. Later on, we definitely can control what a paragraph looks like. If we want to have indentation or we want to have some padding on the left or on the right side, we can definitely control it with CSS. But this is for paragraph. And paragraph, this is paragraph. And there's something else. So H and P's are more for, say, if you want to have a text or an article, you probably use H and the P's to show the content of the article. But if you want to control some layout, say you want to have some header region, you want to have some, say, left side control region, the main region, you do not want to use H and P's to control it. You have some very powerful tools. This is probably the most widely seen tag that is called a div. A div is basically a region, a block in your web page. A div, you can basically include anything, say H1, this is OPS, okay? Then this is OPS HTML as a text, as a paragraph. Then you can basically have another div. Replicate the same div again. You can see, okay, we have two divs and they have the same content. We can go to the HTML page, refresh it. You can see these two divisions are stacked with each other. So the basic idea of a div is that two divs should stack with each other. They should show horizontally. Each div should occupy the whole horizontal space. This is division. And one very useful thing that you probably want to debug HTML or CSS is to use these browsers. Browsers are very, very good debugging tools. So you can right click on something and click on inspect element. You will see this page, this site as a developer console. And you can see, okay, we have this HTML page, which is exactly what we have in our text editor. Now we have head, we have title, we have body. It automatically adds something. I don't know if it's because of my browser or my extensions, because extensions can sometimes modify what is actually shown on the page. But it's we don't need to care too much about it. Then we can show, okay, this is the first div, this is the first H1, then this is the first paragraph. Then the second div, second H1, and second paragraph. You can hover on it, and you can show which part on the web page corresponds to which part in the HTML text. And also a useful tool here is sometimes you cannot find it in the HTML text. You just want to say, okay, I see something here, but I don't know where it is in the code. You can use this tool. Click on it, then you click on, okay, you click on this, then it will automatically show, okay, this is the OPS. So I click on it, I hover on it, or I can click on it, it will show, okay, this is an H1, and it also corresponds to this H1 here. Okay, so this is a useful tool, and we're going to use this tool a lot in this tutorial. So this is div, and here, remember, our goal is to show a login page, right? So in a login page, you probably expect forms. You expect forms, you have this, say what's your username, what's your password, and you want to remember me, then you probably also want to have a link that say, what if I forget my password? Okay, so that's probably work on it. So a quick design of this page, what it will look like that, okay, this is the page, and we're going to have a title, say OPS login, for example. Then we're going to have a form here, and this form has just 2 columns and 2 and 2 column, 2 rows, and this is so a username, this is password. Now we have text input, okay, password, text input. Of course, this one will be shown as star, 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 star. Okay, then there's we're going to have a button. We're going to have a link, say forget password, and we're going to have a button called submit. Okay, it's always to have some like basic drawing, this wire, these diagrams to help you guide your design. Okay, we have it in mind, then we'll clear it. So the first thing, we're going to have a div. Then in this div, we're going to have H1. Say this is OPS, say OPS login. Okay, the same as the title. Now here we're going to have a form. In a form, you always want to have a form as a tag. Okay, and let's say in a form we can have different type of things. We can have let's find some reference. Okay, so we can always search HTML form. W3C Schools is generally a website. It provides some very basic information. Recently, I found it actually this website. I don't know what's going on, but this website seems to have a very high memory footprint. It takes a lot of my CPU cycles, but let's still use it. Okay, this is an example. You can find a lot of these type of examples here, but we can. This basically provides the information we need, so we can just directly use it. So let's see. You can. I think you can probably try it yourself. Then you can see the source code and what it shows like in a web page. Okay, I'm going to put it on the left. On the right, I'm going to put my text editor on the left. So in this form, what we're going to have is basically a pair of pairs of labels and input. Then let's say we here need a label, and this label is for it's used for later. So and we're going to in this label we're going to have this first name. Okay, first name, not first name. We're going to have username. Let's use email, username. Then we're going to have an input. This input is basically this text box for you to put into input, and we need to specify the the type of this input widget. Text, we call it text. Okay, so this is another thing that you have never seen before in your HTML. In an HTML tag, you rather than having in a tag, rather than having the content, you should also have properties. So you're specifying the property of this tag. Each tag, they may have different type of properties. And let's say, okay, we want to have something else. Now we have name equals to email. Let's call it email. Then value, we're not going to provide a value here. Let's just use the email here. Let's just provide this information. We're going to talk about ID later. I don't think we really have to have ID here. Also, input is another type of text that you do not have to close it. Right? If I try to close it, VS Code will automatically try to close the form. You do not have to try to close it. It's just a tag by itself. It doesn't have content. And also you see this BR tag is a special tag that tells the browser to change to a new line. Let's use BR. Now let's have another group. So we want to have an email. We want to have password. Text email. Okay. The text name is password. And also don't forget this. We need to specify. Okay, this label is for email, and this label is for password. It actually maps to this name field. If you don't have it at this moment, we're not going to see a lot of difference, I think. But it's generally a good habit to have this for field in the label. Then finally, we're going to have a type. We're going to have another input, which is a button type equals to submit. Value is I think the value is the text that is shown in the button. We call it submit. Okay, so let's run this one. Let's run our website to see if it's the same as the other one. So let's come here, let's refresh it. We see, okay, we have this very simple form here. So we have an email. Now we have password. Password is something, okay? Here, there's a big problem saying, okay, where password is in plain text, is in visible text, and we don't want that. We want to tell HTML saying, okay, this is important information, this is credentials, and we should not show it directly here. So we need to use another property to tell, okay, this field is a password. So we need to check it. You just cannot simply remember that. So HTML input password. So I think it already directly showed me the information. I generally feel this Mozilla's website it's kind of more verbose. It's sometimes harder for you to get information compared to W3C school, but it's generally good for you to it's more like the information is richer here, more information here. So input type should be password. It should not be text. Okay, so password, we have this password. And very interesting thing, say there are many different things that you can specify in these forms, in this input tag. And so here I see something that's minimum length is 8. I don't know what's going on. What will happen if I'm not typing enough words? It seems it won't do anything, but probably it have something to do with JavaScript. Okay, so we have a password. Now come back here and we refresh. you can see, okay, this email and password is not shown here. So someone picks it into your computer, you cannot see what's your password. Submit it. It will not do anything. You can see when I submit, it tries to redirect to something. Then it's actually, you can see this is the default path. We'll talk about these parameters later. This path is changing, but basically we have this email and the password here. Whenever we click submit, it will try to perform some action to redirect it to another web page. So this is generally an old school way to define a login system. So when you click on submit, it will actually redirect you to another page. And that page tries to authorize your information, tries to check your information. Then it will jump back to another page. It's an old school way to define a web page. Right now, we prefer to use a JavaScript to perform this action. So we're going to disable this action later when we talk about JavaScript. But I say, but I still want to tell you about this thing. This is something, even if you need to disable it, you need to know how it works. Okay, let's come back to this form. Come back to this code here. You see this action? Action is another page that needs to go to if you click on this submit page. Let's simply name it as, say, authorization. The HTML. Okay, we just do an experiment. Let's refresh it. Let's have an email. Let's have a password. Let's submit it. You see, okay, it automatically goes to this page called authorization HTML and provides email as something and password as something. This is very dangerous because you are passing your password as a plain text on the on the website on internet just freely. Everyone can see this information. So do not use this way to transfer password. You have to transfer for password. We can talk about how to hide this information. Okay, but basically, because we do not have this authorization.html page, it will return an error, and there's an error code. So we have a server, right? Or right now our server is a Python server. Later on, we're going to replace it with a Node.js server. Right now, we simply have a Python server. Then we have our browser. This is the code that runs in a browser. Now we have a browser. Then so you can see this network. Then see what's going on. Okay, we can come back to login.html. So the client sends a request to the server, and the server responds the request. So say here, we're sending a request to say, okay, we want this file called login.html. Then login.html, then the server returns with a status. 200 is probably the thing that you want to look at. 200 means, okay, it works. The type is a documentation, and the size and the time it takes 310 milliseconds to load this web page to get the response from the server. And also it automatically loads some images. I don't exactly know what it is. Okay, I think I can barely see this is probably related to LastPass because I have LastPass in this password manager, so it automatically downloads this password from somewhere. I don't know where it actually downloads. This is because of the plugin I'm using. If I'm not using this plugin, you will probably not see this type of PNG loading here. But so let's say if I run something, I type in something, I click on submit, then you can see, okay, it will jump to another page. It will clear all the existing web pages, and also it will show, it will send a request for this authorization HTML, this particular page with some extra parameters. Okay, the format of this parameter is always say it's always separated with a question mark. Before the question mark is the location that we're looking at, is the page we're looking at. And after that, we have parameters. The first parameter is email, and using equal sign, then this is the value of this parameter. And you use an ampersand to separate the parameters. So you can have as many parameters as possible, but there's a total length limitation of this particular way to add parameters. But typically that as long as you do not pass in large files, you do not pass pictures, the size is good enough. So you can see the second parameter is the password, right? And the server returns a 404 file not found error. And 404 is the status for file or some content that is not found. So then we cannot see the page. So this is called HTTP protocol. HTTP protocol works in this way: the client sends a request to a server, and the server responds with a status code and with different content. So I think this is interesting. We can talk about this right now. So let's look at HTTP error code. There are lots of error code, and there's something quite surprising, something very interesting. Say the first error code is 100 continue. So means it's not completed. So probably more data is going to be transferred. Switch protocol. I actually have never seen anyone uses 100 series 100 series response, and 200 is the most widely used response. The 200 is okay, and sometimes you want to use say 202 this type of information, and people rarely use these other things. 200 is widely used. 300 is redirection. Then sometimes you may see 301, but 300 other things are still rarely used. And 400 things, because it's error code, is always is something that you would always see. Like 400 is bad request. So it's more like Python's value error or type error. So you're sending me something wrong. I want you to give me an integer, but you give me a string. Then this 400 is probably a good thing. Okay, a good thing to return. 401 is unauthorized. You have to log in or you have to have the authorization. Now 403 is forbidden. Is similar to 401, but 403 is it means it's more likely to be something that I know who you are. You are logged in, but you are not allowed to see this information. 404 is the second most widely used return code, then second to 200. Okay, so if something is not found, then you should use 404. Let's see something interesting. Okay, gone. 410 is gone. If 413 is payload too large, means you're trying to send too large information. I cannot handle it. Okay. 401, I'm not a teapot. So the server refused to attempt to brew coffee with a teapot. So it basically is the client is requesting some feature that is not supported by the server. Okay. And there are many different type of like 429 too many requests. So if you try to keep sending requests to a server, say a Twitter server or Google server, then sometimes they may return 429 because you're sending too soon, sending too many requests, and then you may get this error. And so 4 series error generally means client-side error. So you are sending a request that the server thinks you are making a mistake. You should not have this behavior. And 500 error like 500 is probably the third mostly widely seen error code. So that means there's a bug in the server code and the server cannot continue. It doesn't know how to get you the correct information, and the programmer believes, okay, this is just a bug in the server side, not in the not the client's fault. Okay, so we have so many error code, and later on, when we define this server to client APIs, we're going to use this error code. Okay, so this is the error code for HTTP. Let's come back to this HTML word. Okay, we're going to we have this web page. Let's come back to login.html. We have this page. This page doesn't look good. We want to make it slightly better. We can click on inspect, and we can use here. We can use this button to move it to the bottom. We have very narrow screen right now. So we have login. And it doesn't look good. We can make it looks nicer later, but with a CSS. But at least one thing we want to have is to have a alignment. So we want to have email, and then we want to make some empty spaces so these text boxes start at the same point, right? So in this way, we're going to use a table. A table can be defined with HTML. Then we're going to have a table, and in table, let's come to search some information about how to write a table. There are different tags inside a table, HTML table. But typically, the thing you're going to use is tr and td. So tr means a row, and td means a cell. Okay, so we have a tr, we have this row, then we want to have a td, and this td we have this label. So you can always put things. Can I return? Yep, I can return to the previous status. I think there's something wrong with the Vim plugin and the VS Code, so they kind of conflict with each other. But that's fine. Let's add a label here. Label. Label. This is email, right? We have email, and then we have this for property. For equals to email, right? So we have one TD, then we can have another TD. And we're going to put this input here. So typically you can see there are many levels of indentation in HTML. It's kind of not avoidable. It's not the same as when you write a Python program or when you write a JavaScript program. You can use some way, you can declare a function or something to make it more modular and less level of indentation. With HTML is very hard. So the thing is, I typically have this 80 line, 80 character limitation. So I don't want my line to grow more than 80 characters. But I think for HTML, it's very reasonable to extend it to 120 characters. Okay, and also here, we do not need this break line. We have this table, we have this row. So the next tr will show on the next row. So we're going to remove this br here. Let's start another row here, another td. In this td, we're going to have password. Then td, we're going to have this input. I don't need to care too much about this format because I think I have installed some extension to VS Code so it can automatically format for me. I think it's Beautify, if I'm not wrong. Or probably we do not even need anything. No. No, it's not there. Probably VS Code can directly just simply reformat it for us. So we can remove these empty lines. And it seems we do not have the submit button. Let's have the submit button, which the submit button should not be in the table. Type equals to submit, value equals to submit. Okay, now let's refresh this page. You can see it's not changing too much, but at least it has this alignment. Okay, so here the information is that there are many different tags in HTML, and we're going to introduce more tags later as we develop this website. But for now, this page is kind of you should have a good understanding of about HTML, and you should be able to write very simple web pages. Okay, so that concludes the first part of this tutorial, and I'm going to use my terminal to push it to. I'm going to start a new terminal. Ubuntu 2004, cd dev src GitHub Yifan OPS. We're going to push it. Let's first run git status. We have this client git add --all git status. Now we see, okay, we have index.html and login.html there. We can commit, say creating a login page. We have a message. Okay, this is first time I use it, and this Linux system. So I first need to configure it. Git config local user.email. That is my Gmail account. Now I can use git config user.name. So, okay, now I can try commit again. I committed git status. Okay, on branch main. So this is something different from last time we talked about the git. Main is GitHub is switching from master to main right now. So main is the default branch. The branch is ahead of origin main by one commit. So let's push it. And okay, username again. Password. I need to find GitHub password. Yeah, probably paste it twice. Yep, I'm pushing it. Okay, let's check this GitHub web page, refresh it. Let's see this client is here. Then we can see this index and the login are here. So we have pushed it. That also concludes HTML. In the next video, we're going to talk about the CSS.